Hey all, this is Aki from B4, and I'd like to give out first of all a shout out to my homie Alex, whom gave me this idea of podcasts. Now, I was supposed to make forum threads and link all the stuff that I thought would be smart to link. But at the moment I think this is a better way to go. I will possibly also link something, and I will try to make more of these than one, but I'm fairly sure this will end up being one of those things that I only do once. So I will try to give roughly 20-minute presentations, which is already something that I'm afraid I'll fail at. So, first topic is geothermal power, or volcano power as it is sometimes humorously called. It is power that you get from sticking a long pipe into the ground where it's hot and have water, and you pour it into one end of the pipe, and it comes out as steam from the other end. The pipe goes down and then sideways and then up. So the steam that is released is put into engines and spins the engines, and you get power from it. This is, far as I can tell, the safest and most futuristic power generation mode available. It's in Kenya. Iceland, Philippines, and a few other countries have small percentages, but Kenya is at 51%. It is interesting because it is very reminiscent of falling in a vacuum. You get energy from the radiological decay at the center of your home world, which will be powerful for billions of years. And you kind of fall towards the center of the planet when you build a device, because it causes the heat in the earth to evaporate slightly, and this makes it feel like you're falling towards a country. So if you have two countries and both build geothermal power plants and are roughly on the opposite side of the planet, they will sense when someone is falling asleep on the other side of the planet due to their power generation, but it isn't a main attribute of it. So when you think geothermal, think Star Trek. It's the type of power where you have these magical abilities, but you don't really advertise them. They are not really talked about. That's because it's roughly 200 or 300 years ahead of our current power generation. Coal is what we currently use. That's finding black soil, or hard black soil perhaps is the better word, and burning it in an engine to generate heat and power. Most countries don't use the excess heat, so they have these smokestacks, but some countries use the excess heat, so they don't have smokestacks in their coal power plants in the same traditional way, but they still have them. So after coal, you have gas, which is natural gas, which is basically coal and other energy deposits that have been in the earth and have basically liquefied. They've not really liquefied, gasified is the word. They've turned in a high pressure environment into gas, and it's slightly more pure than coal. So what we're currently doing is hoping that we can switch off from coal and into gas, and we have this bridge in between where we have this technology that we can use. We're not even thinking of, as a society, to go wind. Even if we build the wind power production capabilities that we need, we don't have anywhere near the finances to keep them going and have the power storage facilities and everything else we need to have a system like that. So no respectable government or environmental authority is telling you that we will be switching to wind or to solar or to water. That's because those are hundreds of years ahead in the future. It's coal, gas, and depending on who you ask, next is either uranium or bio in terms of pollutionability. After that, you have water, wind, and geo. So each of these is a generational shift. So you have to understand that if you go backwards from coal, it's in the Victorian era when coal was the thing that was coming on. In the Victorian era, which is 19th century, people still mostly burned wood. Coal was a new thing. And for a long time, the UK had a dominance in coal that was complete. They produced more than any other country in the world combined by a long margin, and they continuously attacked anyone who got a serious coal production going. So that's the Victorian era, that's the wars we're seeing. Some countries have switched to natural gas, and they advertise it widely. And they think that being able to have natural gas production on their own and have natural gas buses and such is a huge deal. But we're still talking about a single generational shift. This is going from the super polluted cities of the 19th century, where the smog was literally so bad that you couldn't see the skyline ever, to having natural gas where we do see the skyline, but the pollution is more methane. It's high altitude and it's very bad for the heating part of the environment. So that's in about 100 years. So when we get to the early part of the 21st and 20th centuries, after the Victorian era and into the modern world with the, nationalists, we see oil making a small bid for its control over the power system. And we note that oil is basically from the perhaps 30s to perhaps the 70s. That's not even a full generation, but let's call it a generation. So after oil, we get to natural gas. If you think back to the coal societies that we had and compare them to the oil societies that we had with the grey coats and everything, and then think to natural gas societies where all the hippies are roaming out in the yard, and you think there are 4 more generational shifts between us as a planet getting to Geo, which is the Star Trek model, and there are 3 behind us, and we get to basically full-blown imperialism with no free will for anyone. So what we need to do is to understand that countries like Iceland and Kenya are already at Geo. They don't care about our coal problems. They literally don't care. Most of the people of Iceland, or a large majority of the people of Iceland, are very religious, spiritual. They believe in spirits. The same is kind of true for Kenya as far as I know of. And this seems to me to be true, that Geo, or the uranium at the center of the planet that produces the residual heat that we're using, is dependent on life on the surface of the planet continuing to live. Because if we, I suppose I could say, if we exhaust the residual walking energy on the surface, Geo will not be pleasant, I suppose. When your power generation is entirely dependent on falling towards an invisible entity that doesn't actually exist, like the Earth or the Sun or any other debatably solid object, what you get is falling towards your nightmares, or what has been called dream energy. So these societies truly live in the angel era. They understand that the earth is a single organism, and once you've built your power plant, you just wait. And any kind of disruption in the people of the planet causes that power plant to malfunction. You don't need spare parts for almost anything. You don't need an external mine. You don't need an external supporter. All you need is a stable, calm planet. You don't even need the super factories that produce the windmills. You can literally build a geothermal power plant in your backyard. But the problem with this is that most people, if you take them from a coal era, where you literally have to control a large country and dig it out for your own benefit of your own country and destroy everything you find in that country because that is coal mining. If you take people from that era and tell them that there's a power generator that works for an infinite amount of time until your sun explodes and destroys your planet, it gives you power by being relaxed and loving to your community. It requires virtually no spare parts and very little maintenance. You understand that these people will not be physically capable of understanding what you mean. They will not understand the difference. They will tell you that electricity comes from the plug in the wall. It is always electricity. They don't understand that when you purchase an electric contract for yourself, you're not making sure that the coal in your system or the energy in your system comes all from that source. You are making sure that your house comes from that source. You need to buy your food from a geothermal power plant using farm. You need to buy your medicines. You need to buy your entire society from those power plants. You can't just switch your home power and think that you are now an ascended being. You have to do an enormous amount of work. But the reality is that you are falling towards your dreams. You are falling towards the people that have been already buried, and you are finding a better way to get between them into a deeper and deeper set of the earth. Every layer of the earth is another creature that has been buried, and you are, through your act of slowly falling to the center of the earth, navigating between these different entities. So if you try to explain this to someone, they will think, no, geothermal is a hole in the ground into which you pour water. Basically, yeah, nuclear power plant is a giant ball of light that you build a reactor around and then just have it heat steam, but it is not that simple. A nuclear power plant is an atomic bomb. You have to understand everything about the nuclear technology up to having an atomic bomb before you can actually build a nuclear power plant. Even the small machines, the centrifuges that are used to enrich the uranium so that it can be used in a power plant, take decades under normal circumstances for a country the size of Iran to build. So the shift in consciousness is massive. It can't be explained. You can't understand what it is like to have power from your alliances, from falling towards the center of the earth and having alliances on the other side of the planet that benefit from your calm sleep. They pay you to continue to be calm. It benefits them. So comparing that to the coal era and having people talk about having power from alliances that you never see, only based on because you are now sleeping more comfortably. It's hoopla, but it's true. So if we chart the path from coal to geo, like I said, we have these intervening middle steps. We are currently at a point where most of the Western societies agree that they should give up coal and switch to gas and build renewables at the same time. None of them are thinking of going to a full geo base of the large powers. We have Iceland, Philippines, Kenya, that's basically it. My music is a little bit distracting. So after natural gas, we would get wind, which is everybody knows the main downside of wind, which is the enormous amount of sound it makes. They haven't really discussed that with wind power. If it's done too much, you will create a system of electrical discharge arcs in your atmosphere. And that kind of rise as the spirit of the conversation rises, as the suddenly fluctuating price of energy drives to the lowest point in the energy market and pushes everybody else off. So if it is more beneficial to sell quickly produced cheap energy to a bunch of cosplayers, then the main society will appear cosplayers. There is no steady stream of resources from a single power plant. There is a distributed system that benefits from all the motion on the surface but doesn't go deeper than that. It only benefits from what can be described with a little bit of humor as the sound of past wars. This is because the sound of the wind hitting and the system the wind hits and how the wind moves carries sounds that you thought were gone, because that is wind, that is chaos theory. The butterfly flapping its wings. So even switching from natural gas to wind would make things like auditory hallucinations a real reality for most of the people on the planet. They wouldn't be able to cope with it. Now, going from wind to water and having repeatable family relations appear, meaning that when you push a person out of your life, a new person appears who looks almost exactly like the person who you pushed out. This is because while on a good day you will build this enormous well into which you pour water, or, well, it's a river, but in this particular metaphor it's a well, into which you pour water, and it's built on a location that's a good location for you at that moment. So it's based on a person you know or an energy source you know. So if you do become angry at that energy source or person or an alliance, you will see that same alliance or person appear again and again and again. This is because the same area is cheaper. For example, if you always build water in a different ethnic location and you suddenly stop building water, it won't stop that building from being in that ethnic location. You will get that ethnicity. But in this case, it's more refined than that. You get specific people. And these are the kind of exceptionally rare complications you get from power production when people unshielded just test what happens, and you will note that these are things that most people won't even know. But if you talk to the true professionals of the field, they will know these side effects, like wind power generations, sound generating infrasound, and how that messes with people's minds and so on. So that would be going from natural gas to wind or to water, and that would be a generation. That would be Holland. That would be one of those super liberal societies that has managed to survive every war around them and has thrived and been a commercial success for 400 years. They've gone through wind. Yet we don't have the power to go wind. We don't have it. We just don't have the ability to build the factories fast enough so that we could build those things fast enough without polluting more. It would produce more waste because we would be in a hurry. So there's nothing. If we look at the world and go through this coal, uranium, bio, water, wind, geo. If we go through this system and we look at all the countries in the world, we can see the advanced and the not advanced. And we can see the world community average, who we are actually talking to, the ego, as being not advanced. We're a child society. So that's my speech on geo. And there isn't much else to say about it. It is the power of falling asleep, or calm dreams, or alliances, or spirit world, perhaps is the best one. So that is why we should build every renewable, basically, and try to hope that we'll evolve fast enough. The direction is right. We will have to give up coal, but it will take some time. So, next 20-minute speech.